When they project onto you, you see it for what it is, and you shake it off. The same way a wolf shakes off when it gets a fright at the edge of the forest. You just mentally go, oh, projection. And you remain largely unbothered. This is one of the biggest benefits of having emotional boundaries. Hi, it's me, your internet auntie. And today I'm going to teach you the skills to become unfuckwithable. But first, you have to have the courage to confront your own shadow. Before we get into today's video, I have a quick visualization for you. Now, you know I love a good medieval fantasy metaphor, or what I like to call castle theory. So close your eyes and get comfy and imagine that you are the king or queen of your very own castle. You tend the gardens, you organize feasts for your friends and family and all the villagers. You oversee the construction and repair of your city and the well-being of its residents. And this is your life. The castle is your life. And all of this hard work has to be protected because it's inherently valuable. That's why we have city walls or boundaries. While the walls might keep out the thieves and the riffraff, it gets a little more complicated when some cheeky bugger shows up with a trebuchet. This is how I want you to view projection. When someone projects onto you, they are effectively flinging projectiles at your city walls. So, how will you defend against it? How can you become so secure within yourself that you become unfuckwithable? I'll keep this castle trebuchet visual in your mind because we're going to get back to that later on in the video, and there will also be dragons. Our shadow, as Carl Jung called it, is all the parts of ourselves that we reject and deny, all the parts of ourselves that we learned to feel ashamed of. When I first heard the term shadow work, I think it was about 10 years ago, I thought it would be confronting all the worst parts of myself, that I would learn to recognize them in order to contain and control or even destroy those parts of myself that were bad or wrong. But over the last decade of doing this work, I've realized the shadow doesn't contain good or bad traits and desires. They're just traits and desires. They're neutral. Any trait can be used for constructive or destructive purposes. It depends how we utilize them. So, in castle theory, my analogy of the dragon guarding her treasures. Dragon, dragon. He's licking his willy. Dragon, dragon. Oh, hello. My analogy of the dragon guarding her treasures goes like this. The shadow of your psyche is a deep, dark cave system lying under your castle. And right now, you're stumbling around in the dark, too scared to light a lantern because you fear what you might see. Because in this deep, dark cave system lies a dragon. Many of us make the mistake of trying to slay this dragon, hide it, or at least enslave it, get it under control. We try to suppress, reject, and deny our true natures, our true desires. We sometimes feel the hot breath of the dragon in the dark. We hide from her because we don't understand her. She might be scaly and maybe doesn't have the best morning breath, but she's not a bad dragon. She's like the dragon in Shrek. Everyone is scared of her. They assume she's violent and terrible, and they want to slay her to take away her power. But Donkey is the first character to ever have the courage to simply stand still, legs trembling, and take her in and allow her to show him who she really is. This act of shadow work is the equivalent of lighting a lantern in the darkness, looking around and realizing all the treasures that have been hiding there, glittering in the dark. My love of singing was in my shadow for decades. My mother was classically trained and loved to sing opera. And when I didn't win the singing competitions she entered me into, she was very disappointed and complained that my voice would never be as rich as hers. My stepmother said that I was being rude if I was just humming to myself very quietly. My second boyfriend would immediately turn the radio up if I was humming just so quietly, and he would continue to turn it up incrementally until I finally shut up. All these experiences made me believe that my singing was annoying and rude and wrong and something to be ashamed of. So I only ever sang when I was alone. Now, hearing all this, you might think that my singing voice sounds like a rabid pig being slaughtered, but despite not being any good at opera, I'm actually a pretty good jazz and blues singer. My voice has that soft, velvet quality that is criticized in opera, but adored for more torchy genres. I was a fish being judged on its ability to climb a tree. But because I felt ashamed of my singing, I continued to attract and be drawn to people who reflected and reinforced that shame back to me because the shame was internal at that point. I had a friend about 13 years ago who used to sing live at bars, and I always thought she was a bit self absorbed for needing all that attention. But I was criticizing her expression of my suppressed desires. I also idolized her, putting her up on a pedestal and wanting to live vicariously through her. I didn't see her as she was. I saw her as I needed her to be. This is the core of what projection actually is. Sometimes she was the hero, and sometimes the villain. Whatever my fragile 23-year-old ego needed her to be at the time. Last year, I finally worked up the courage to sing live in a blues bar, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. The audience was loving it, and at one point, I saw the owner of the bar sort of laying back, eyes half closed, and just smiling to himself, and he's sort of like moving his hand along to the music. And it was just so nice to be able to connect with everyone in that way. So we'll get back to the dragon and the castle analogy really soon. Maybe someone told you you're too sensual, that you're a pick me, and that you're trying to appeal to the male gaze. So you learn to dress in baggy clothes and never wear your favorite lipstick and be more plain, more acceptable to someone else's idea of who you should be. These parts of ourselves that aren't allowed to be expressed in a healthy way are often the parts we end up criticizing in others, even though what they're doing isn't actually hurting anyone. And so we try to justify our discomfort by moralizing their behavior and convincing ourselves that they are somehow in the wrong. I had a woman comment on my channel. This is really right in the early days. I mean, we're still in early days now, but one of my first videos, I had a woman comment and she said that my video was, quote, male centered patriarchy fuel. And yet, when I gently challenged her and asked her, oh, okay, which exact part of the video did you feel, in your opinion, that was male centered? And she had no response. That video was actually promoting sovereignty in dating and staying grounded in your own life, your own friends, your hobbies, your interests, your goals. And yeah, I think I did mention men in a positive light at some point, God forbid. But the fact that she appears to be scanning for anything that might be creatively interpreted as male centered patriarchy fuel is actually just evidence of her own male centeredness, which she was projecting onto me. I've had men comment saying that I'm leading women astray with talk of being wild and getting in touch with our instincts, as though that equates to sexual promiscuity, which is something I have never talked about, never encouraged, never even approached the topic. And yet that's their assumption, even though I've said nothing of the sort. I'm actually quite traditional when it comes to relationships, but I think everyone should do what feels right to them. But anyway, years ago, those kinds of projections would have had me seriously destabilized for weeks or maybe even months. I would have internalized their opinions because I didn't have strong enough emotional boundaries, castle walls. I didn't have a very strong sense of self. So the opinions of others, no matter how wildly inaccurate, would make me spiral into self doubt and shame for weeks. And yet these days, the projections fall flat. I honestly just have a giggle because it's so far removed from reality. I observe how little curiosity they show. They don't try to gain an understanding of what I'm actually saying. They just need to paint me as the villain. And you know what? I don't mind playing into it with my smoky eyeliner and my red lips. So when you take the time to get to know yourself, what's and all, and truly accept yourself as you are, you can accept other people as they are rather than needing them to fit into a certain identity that you've assigned them as either the glorious hero or the dastardly villain. That's when you stop projecting and start connecting. And recognizing this pattern means that other people no longer have the power to manipulate you into playing certain roles that they approve of. When they project onto you, you see it for what it is and you shake it off. The same way a wolf shakes off when it gets a fright at the edge of the forest. You just mentally go, oh, projection. And you remain largely unbothered because you choose not to submit to that pressure. And this is one of the biggest benefits of having emotional boundaries. In fairy tales, the dragon guards treasure. Negative projection guards disowned power, disowned desires, singing in a blues bar, or wearing your favorite lipstick. Shadow work here is not slaying the dragon, it is befriending her, lighting the lantern and getting to know her. Befriending the dragon is your greatest defense against the trebuchet of projection. When anger is rejected and filed away in the shadow, it becomes resentment, passive aggression, depression, and sabotage, among other things. When anger is reclaimed, it becomes healthy boundaries and self respect. When ambition is denied, it turns into jealousy, gossip, and feeling threatened by someone else's competency. When ambition is embraced, it becomes purpose. When sensuality is suppressed, it sours into feeling stifled, stiff, and excessively serious. But when sensuality is explored, it flourishes into creativity and playfulness. And no, sensuality is not synonymous with sexuality. It's sensory, your senses, what you can hear, smell, touch, taste. Get your mind out of the gutter. So, just like with Donkey, the dragon becomes your fiercest and most loyal ally. Now, you remember the castle and the trebuchet. I don't have one of those at hand, so I can't. I'm sure you can imagine. How better to defend against a trebuchet than with a dragon by your side? Trebuchets are made of wood, and wood is historically quite flammable. So we know how to deal with negative projection now. But did you know there's something called positive projection? And it's just as dangerous. But before we move on to the next section, I do unfortunately need to add a disclaimer at this point because while I'm sure you are intelligent and reasonable, this is the internet. So I do have to confirm that I'm not recommending literal arson just because Aunt Sally is projecting her unmet ambitions onto you again at the Sunday lunch. Most of us do this unconsciously. They're not meaning to hurt you or make you feel like you're not good enough. They just aren't aware of their own shadow. I'm not recommending any revenge or retaliation of any kind. The purpose of this visual is to be able to recognize projection as a trebuchet, as a projectile, hurtling towards your castle walls, and visualize your dragon as the loyal guardian of your castle. So when a projectile is thrown your direction, she turns it to ash in a single fiery breath. All you need to do is think, oh, projection, and she'll take care of the rest. Positive projection might sound like a positive thing, but it's just as damaging as a negative projection. With negative projection, we view a person as more bad than they actually are. And with positive projection, we view them as more perfect than they actually are. Seeing someone through rose tinted glasses, I'm sure you've heard that saying. Positive projection sets us up for disappointment and leaves us feeling victimized when the other person doesn't meet our expectations. No one is 100% good or 100% bad. Although you could argue with some of the Epstein files that have been released. We won't get into that. Any form of projection is a problem of being misaligned with reality in some way. We want to move away from black and white extremes and try to center ourselves as close to the observable truth as possible, while maintaining the humility to accept that not a single one of us perceives reality with 100% accuracy. It's not possible. We all have our biases. It's just part of being human, and that's okay. Oh my gosh, I was like stumbling around in the forest there earlier, and I think I'm allergic to something down there. Oh my, look at my chest. Oh. Sometimes we ignore early warning signs like hot and cold behavior because we projected a future relationship onto someone we're dating. If we want stability in a relationship, we project that desire onto others, even though they're showing up consistently as unreliable. We assume that someone we're dating wants mutual love and respect because that's what we want. And maybe they said that's what they want, but their actions tell a different story. So when they treat us with hot and cold cycles, we ignore the behavior, we excuse it, we justify it, we rationalize it away as, oh, she just had a bad day, or he's just misunderstood, or it's just their attachment trauma. And maybe those things are true to an extent, but ultimately we have to stay grounded in the reality of how they are actually showing up day by day. We see this in the story of Bluebeard, a French folk tale accredited to Charles Perrault in 1697, although the bones of the story are far more ancient. Two sisters meet a man with an alarmingly blue beard. All the women in the village whisper about how his previous wives disappeared under very mysterious circumstances. But he's charming and flashy, and he makes them laugh. He throws lavish parties and entertains them with wild stories of his adventures, and he's overwhelmingly generous, which doesn't hurt. So the younger sister convinces herself that maybe his beard isn't that blue. The blueness of his beard is an analogy for what we would call red flags. She projects her idealized vision of the future onto him. So she turns a blind eye to the obvious and accepts his marriage proposal. Well, he turns out to be very dangerous, and she nearly loses her life. So, positive projection can be just as damaging as negative projection. When we project positively onto a potential partner, we have to ignore reality because it would cause us to see how blue his beard really is. And to see the blueness of his beard would cause our fantasy to collapse. So we ignore reality to preserve our fantasy. When we're constantly scanning for perfection in others and needing a savior, or looking for things to criticize in others in order to affirm our own superiority or identify a villain, what's really happening is we're stumbling around in the darkest corners of our psyche, and the dragon is breathing smoke over our shoulders, hoping, begging for you to light the lantern and begin that journey inwards. You never know what treasures might be glittering alone in the dark. So the next time you feel someone projecting onto you, remember who the fuck you are. You are unfuckwithable. So get your journals out Think of a time you projected onto someone. Why did you do it? What story were you telling yourself? And are there times you remember someone else projecting onto you? How did it feel to you? And how will you become so grounded in who you actually are that the projections of others go up in a puff of smoke? And don't forget, there are dozens of journaling prompts available over on my Patreon for all free members. And there's also my second ebook, Survival to Sovereign, which is a 30-day transformation of self-awareness, healthy boundaries, and shadow work. And since you made it all the way to the end of this video, I'm guessing you feel very aligned with this journey. So I want to give you your first month for free with the link hiding in the description, at the bottom of the description. Okay, I had to hide it from everyone else. Shh, don't tell anyone. Because there's only 10 free spots available. So get your ass up and get down there.